a Times Union podcast. Previously on The Girl in the Pond.
Who was she connected to?
Right.
And what did she know? And was that why she was knocked off?
Right. The investigation into Hazel Drew's murder set off all kinds of speculation into her personal life. Was she having an affair? Was she pregnant? Did she run afoul of Troy's powerful political machine? Was she leading a secret, salacious double life behind a virtuous exterior?
The rampant public speculation surrounded and perhaps even clouded the investigation.
It is the theory of the officials that the girl either met a man prior to going to the pond and accompanied him there, or went there to keep an appointment.
Remember, my girl, most men have two sides.
'Tis the last rose of summer left blooming alone.
I'm Jessica Marshall.
And I'm Patrick Tyne, and we're determined to find out who Hazel Drew was.
And what happened to her? This is The Girl in the Pond. Episode 4. Family Ties.
Flower of her kindred, no rosebud is not.
This episode contains subject matter that may be disturbing to some listeners, so please continue on with care.
But it is believed that the girl was either hit on the back of the head with a blunt instrument and rendered unconscious and died in a short time, or she wrestled with her companion and was thrown forcibly on a rock. The companion, seeing that life was extinct, in an endeavor to cover up the crime, took the body to the pond and threw it in.
As of July 14th, 1908, 3 days after the body was found, police still did not have any solid leads. District Attorney Jarvis O'Brien had the case. He started in on intense questioning of Hazel Drew's family. Her parents, John and Julia Drew, did not seem to know much about their daughter or what she was up to in the days before she died. Her older brother, Joseph Drew, and sister-in-law, Eva, did not offer much useful information either. But investigators believed someone in her family did know more about Hazel's lifestyle.
The only person who seems to be in a position to be able to advance any information is her aunt, Miss Minnie Taylor.
Minnie Taylor, Hazel's mother's younger sister.
Miss Taylor, when seen by a Times Union reporter, had just finished reading an account of the finding of her niece's body and was in tears. She, however, tersely said she would not discuss the murder, that she knew nothing about it. She is about 30 years of age, and she and Hazel were together quite often.
Minnie wasn't married. Like Hazel, she worked as a domestic servant. She worked for a wealthy Troy banker. She and Hazel were seen around town a lot together. The papers called them chums. In today's parlance, that would be something like besties. If anyone knew anything about Hazel Drew's personal life and whether it led to her murder, investigators thought that it had to be Aunt Minnie.
District Attorney O'Brien believes that Miss Taylor, if she tries to refresh her recollections, may be able to furnish something upon which they can work. She has been sent for and is to be closely questioned.
Minnie was defensive, though. At times, recalcitrant. She did not give investigators much. She did admit a few things, though. She and Hazel had spent the 4th of July together. They went to city festivities at a public park. And then they took a trolley to Schenectady, about 15 miles west of Troy. They spent the night with cousins there. and the next day, she said, they came back to Troy. Minnie returned to her employer's house, and Hazel, well, her aunt told investigators that Hazel said she was headed to visit a friend in Watervliet. That's a city directly across the Hudson River from Troy. And that, she said firmly, was the last time she saw Hazel. 6 days before the body was found. Rumors swirled in the papers about Hazel and Minnie being spotted in recent months driving around town in carriages with men. Minnie wouldn't confirm any of that. Investigators were convinced that she was hiding something.
While it would seem that the relatives of the Drew girl would do all in their power to assist in clearing away this mystery, such is not the case with her aunt and chum, Miss Taylor. She has tersely informed her questioners that she would not tell whom their associates were, saying that to do so would involve a lot of girls in an unfortunate affair. Why she takes the stand is a mystery to District Attorney O'Brien.
Aunt Minnie was questioned, and she wouldn't be forthcoming with any information.
Sand Lake town historian Bob Moore has spent a lot of time trying to sort out fact from fiction when it came to Minnie Taylor's relationship with her niece and what she knew about the murder.
She would talk about driving around Troy in a carriage with a number of men, and she would say, well, I'm not going to speak on that. I can't believe that things weren't pushed a little bit more.
Mark Marshall thinks Minnie Taylor should have been thrown in jail for obstructing justice.
She told O'Brien, it's none of your business. This is the district attorney of Troy. And she's telling him it's none of your business what Hazel and I do. You know, and he's trying to investigate the murder of his niece.
Why do you think she was like that? Was she trying to cover up for something, or was she just, I don't know, what do you think her...
I don't know. I think she was just very private. And she was a Republican. She did things that, you know, in the Republican Party and stuff like that. And plus her boss, her Harrison, he was a big-time banker and lawyer in Troy. Yeah. And she just didn't want to, you know, get publicized.
Yeah, she didn't want to get caught up in any of that, or
right.
Maybe risk being killed herself.
I mean, I agree with Mark. I mean, for somebody to just say, I'm not going to talk about who I was driving around in a carriage with because it might hurt their reputation. If I was the DA, she should have gone to jail. She should have been in jail.
While District Attorney Jarvis O'Brien was running into a brick wall in Troy with Minnie Taylor, the two detectives he dispatched 10 miles away to Sand Lake were making a little more headway. Their first break came in the form of a 17-year-old farmhand named Frank Smith. He was one of the people who pulled Hazel Drew's body out of the pond. He lived and worked on a farm up on Taborton Mountain. Frank Smith said he saw Hazel Drew walking on the road up Taborton Mountain near Teal's Pond on the night of July 6th, 4 days before her body was found. Frank Smith told the detectives that they stopped when they saw Hazel. Here he is quoted in the New York Evening Journal from July 14th, 1908.
We're using a voice actor here.
I was with Rudolph Gundrum, a charcoal burner who lives 2 miles east of here. We were in his wagon going into Averill Park when we met Hazel on the road going in the direction of Taylor's farm. She looked very pretty, all dressed up in a white silk waist, and when we spoke to her, she seemed real jolly. She said she had come over from Troy to Averill Park in the 7 o'clock trolley car. I thought she was going over to her uncle's, although she had not been there since last winter to my knowledge.
Smith said they parted ways after that brief conversation. Then he and Gundrum continued on down the mountain to grab a drink at the saloon at the bottom. Smith said he left the bar alone around 11 p.m. and went home. Investigators and reporters didn't think much of Frank Smith's credibility. They constantly referred to him as the half-witted farm boy, and they had all but fingered him as a potential suspect. The papers were full of casual assumptions about him, that he was too dumb to get his story straight, or that he was in love with Hazel, So in love that maybe he murdered her, like Lenny Small in Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men, though that book wouldn't be written for another 3 decades. But Frank Smith was the only one who came forward with any information about Hazel at the time. One detail of Frank Smith's story that investigators did consider seriously: he mentioned that he thought Hazel was headed to her uncle's house, her uncle William Taylor, the older brother of Julia and Minnie. At the time, William Taylor was a widower in his 50s. He lived alone on a farm on Taborton Mountain, within walking distance of Teal's Pond. Frank Smith said the last time he saw Hazel prior to July 6th was at William Taylor's house in the winter of 1908. It was also something that Hazel's older brother, Joseph Drew, corroborated.
Hazel was ill for 2 weeks last winter at the home of her uncle, William Taylor, near the scene of the crime. At that time, her brother Joseph and his wife were spending the winter with the uncle. Joseph says Hazel came there in January and complained of not feeling well. She was compelled to go to bed, and Mrs. Drew cared for her. Joseph says that no physician was called, and he did not know the nature of the girl's illness.
Hazel's convalescence in Sand Lake during the winter of 1908 was the subject of a lot of gossip. The doctors who performed the autopsy said she wasn't pregnant at the time of her death. But had she gotten herself into trouble, as they say, 5 months earlier? Did she abscond to the countryside to hide a pregnancy? To have an abortion? Or was she really just sick, like with the flu? There's no way to know for sure. And there's no way to know if it was in any way connected to her death. Investigators questioned William Taylor in Sand Lake. He said he didn't know what was wrong with Hazel the previous winter, and he said he never saw Hazel on July 6th. He didn't even know that she was in town that night or that she was planning to visit him. Media reports described William Taylor as gruff, antisocial. The Times-Union reported that he had attempted suicide after his wife died earlier that year. The paper also reported that, quote, last summer he had a boy working on his farm whom he treated so brutally that the authorities interfered, unquote. It was short on detail beyond that. One thing we know for sure, William Taylor's farm was within easy walking distance of Teal's Pond. It was on the other side of the pond from the road. One could get to his place and back without being seen from the main road. Like Frank Smith, investigators quickly put William Taylor on their short list of potential murder suspects. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.
The decisions made at the state capitol in New York impact all of us, from our property taxes to the cost of health care or our civil rights. It's all really complicated, but I'm here to help you sort through it. I'm Dan Clark, author of the Capitol Confidential newsletter from the Times-Union. Find that at capitalconfidential.com. That's capital with an O. capitalconfidential.com. See you there.
"12-year-old Jaliek Rainwalker vanished without a trace from a small upstate New York village on a cool November night in 2007. His adoptive parents say he ran away. Police believe he was murdered, but a body has never been found, and a suspect has never been named.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah,
Appreciate
okay,
that.
all right, but you don't want to talk.
Then when I learned they were trying to undo the adoption, that's when I learned that this story was very complicated, well, a lot more complicated than I even thought.
Almost 2 decades later, the case remains unsolved. I'm Jessica Marshall.
And I'm Wendy Lipertor.
In this podcast from the Times-Union, we take a deep dive into the mystery of this missing child and try to find some answers.
So have you come to terms that Jalik is probably dead?
Yes. I feel that he was killed on November 1st, 2007.
Available now, wherever you listen to podcasts.
You're listening to The Girl in the Pond.
Hazel came from a dysfunctional family.
Mark Marshall and Bob Moore have spent a lot of time trying to piece together Hazel's family life. They hoped that knowing more about it would shed light on the case. They searched old census records, combed through old school yearbooks, newspapers, and any other public records that miraculously survived for more than a century.
Her father was an alcoholic, and her mother gave a report to the Poughkeepsie newspaper on the 18th that the money that would make the house sufficiently attractive for Hazel to come home was spent on liquor. Her husband was a drinking man, and that was hard for her wife and the mother to say. The father told Hazel that 2 years before that he didn't want to see her face again.
At the time of her death, it seemed that Hazel and her parents, or her father at least, weren't on great terms. That could explain why they didn't really know much about her life when police questioned them. And it also could explain why she went to her uncle's house instead of her parents that winter to recover from whatever sickness it is that she had.
We all thought that too, as far as going out to her uncle's farm. And the newspapers reported on it too that she may have been pregnant and went out to the farm for an abortion. But like I said, the problem that she had with her father is another excuse of why she went out to the farm. So she may not have been pregnant at all. Right. It's because of the internal conflict she was having with her father. She was just sick with a cold or a flu or whatever, and then went out to the Taylor farm because she couldn't go home.
Do you want me to hold it?
Yeah, that would be great, actually. Patrick and I went to visit Bob Moore in his Sand Lake office again. Bob pulled up a photo that he digitized on his phone. Patrick held it up and zoomed in so we could all examine it. It's a school photo of a class of more than a dozen children from the year 1896. They all look about 8 years old. Hazel would have been 8 years old in 1896. And these children are from the school that she would have attended in the rural town where she was born. That one right there?
Yes.
Smack in the middle of the gaggle of kids in this photo is a little girl. She's wearing a dark-colored sailor's dress. She's not smiling. Her head is tilted to one side. She's looking straight into the camera, almost impatiently, like she wanted everyone to know that she had better things to do. Bob and Mark think that little girl could be Hazel. Interesting. What do you think? Do you think that looks like her?
I've been trying to convince myself that it is, but I don't see it.
It's hard to tell at that age.
Bob held up another photo. It was a known photo of Hazel, one of the ones that was printed over and over again in the newspapers. She was about 14 or 15 in this one. There's a similar face shape and head tilt. The timing works with the school photo, but there's room for doubt. The details of Hazel's early life were not really probed in the papers. It didn't seem like investigators were particularly interested in them either. But Bob and Mark think those details are actually a key to their theory of who killed her.
Hazel Irene Drew was born on June 3, 1888, in rural Postenkill. She was the second of 7 children, though only 5 would survive past early childhood. Her upbringing was modest. John and Julia Drew did not have much money, but they didn't starve either. It's hard to tell how much formal education she had. There aren't any known attendance records from the tiny schoolhouse in Post-and-Kill where she would have gone. The only thing that Mark and Bob could track down that contained any sort of clue was that photo. It was printed in a local history book. According to census records Mark Marshall found, John and Julia Drew moved to the city of Troy sometime in 1900 or 1901. Hazel would have been about 12 or 13 at that time. They moved to South Troy. When she was 14 in 1902, Hazel started working as a live-in domestic servant, doing laundry and housework for city treasurer Thomas Hislop. Hislop was a well-connected and active Republican in South Troy.
With the Hislop, she was very religious.
According to her family, Hazel went to church every week. She was devout. She dressed modestly. Bob held up the photo of the 14 or 15-year-old Hazel from the newspaper again. That was from her time working at the Hislop house. Her unsmiling face was plump with youth. Her hair was dark, tied back simply with a girlish bow. She wore a plain-looking white shirt with a short, dark tie knotting the front. In 1906, Thomas Hislop lost his re-election for city treasurer. He was embroiled in a scandal. His deputy was convicted of stealing $10,000 from the public purse. Many thought Hislop was behind it, though he never faced any charges.
I read the whole case. Newspaper reported $10,000, but in the court case it said it was actually $25,000 of cash missing.
If our math is correct, that leaves $15,000 of stolen tax money unaccounted for. In today's money, that would be a little less than $500,000. Not chump change. Like Patrick just said, Hislop was never charged with anything. No one could prove that he took any money. But if he had stolen it, what did he do with it? Could Hazel have known anything about it? Or could she have benefited from it? That could explain a few things. Why she seemed to live above her means in the next few years, for one. Or why she was murdered, for another. Or it could have had nothing to do with anything in her life. Hislop had fallen out of favor in Troy politics. He let Hazel go in 1906 after he was ousted as treasurer. He would eventually get a job as an insurance salesman, but he claimed he couldn't afford live-in help anymore.
That's when Hazel got another job as a domestic for a fabulously wealthy Troy coal merchant named John Tupper. The Tuppers were also very active in Republican politics. They lived in a much more posh neighborhood. Mrs. Tupper was a popular socialite.
When she went to the Tuppers is when she changed. Mrs. Tupper took her underneath her wing, and showed her the finer things of womanhood, how to dress, how to flirt. And Hazel picked that up really quickly. And that's where she started visiting saloons and going to bars and going to Albany and stuff like that. So she really changed from Hislop to Tuppers.
Bob Moore showed us another photo of Hazel that was printed in the newspapers. She's about 18 in this one, and if you didn't know better, you might think it was a completely different person.
Right. And they don't look alike. If you look at those two photographs.
Oh, that was something I was just putting them side by side. I'm like, is that the same person?
Yeah.
But
there was a drastic change between Hislop and Tuppers.
Her face is much thinner, more womanly, more elegant. Her hair appears lighter. She's wearing a giant brimmed hat with what looks like flowers on it. If you didn't already know who she is, you might assume maybe she was a wealthy socialite like her boss, Mrs. Tupper. But her head is tilted the same way as the child and the young teen in the other photos. The same expression, which reads to Patrick and I at least, that she had more important things to do than take a photo.
Hazel stayed with the Tuppers for a little more than a year.
And Aunt Minnie went down to help her out with the chores. And then the next thing you know, she left and went up to the uncle's house.
Hazel was too sick to work. The Tuppers let her go, and she went to Sand Lake.
She left in December 1907.
When she recovered early in the spring of 1908, she got another job. This time, it was with the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute professor E.R. Carey. Carey was also a civil engineer consultant for the city, also active in Republican politics.
But Hazel, as detectives would come to learn, quit the job with the Careys about 4 months later, 2 days before she was murdered. On July 18, 1908, a week after the body was found in Teal's Pond, the Times-Union reported that Hazel's parents suddenly had more to say about their daughter, specifically about her love life. John Drew revealed that Hazel had been engaged to a man a year prior, but he broke it off for another woman. Julia Drew said her daughter had not had a boyfriend since then. This is what she told the Times-Union. We're using a voice actor here.
Hazel, to my knowledge, has not had a beau for more than a year. I asked her recently, "Haven't you got a fellow yet, Hazel?" And she replied, "No, I don't care for one. If I got one, some other girl would cut me out." Hazel then referred to her last love affair with a man who stopped calling on her when she became ill with the grip a year ago last spring, and married another girl.
The grip, by the way, is the modern-day flu. It was the first time anyone had named a diagnosis for Hazel's illness that year. Mrs. Drew also did not give a name for this supposed boyfriend, but she did open up a little more to the Times-Union.
"I've thought this matter over, and I am sure Hazel did not commit suicide. Why would she? She was happy and had everything she wanted. If anything had been wrong, she would have come to me. She always did, and I gave her everything she asked, whether it was money or anything else. She would not have gone to Uncle Will for money, as has been said. That never made her go out to Averill Park on that Tuesday night. But I don't believe it was Hazel that Frank Smith or those other people saw on the road in the night walking alone. She was taken out there, in an automobile or carriage by someone, maybe from Troy. I believe it was someone who was well-to-do and who had Hazel in his control. He mesmerized her, or what you call hypnotized my Hazel, and she did whatever he asked of her. He took her out there while she was under his influence and murdered her."
District Attorney Jarvis O'Brien hauled Minnie Taylor back downtown for questioning, again. Here's more from the Times-Union's article on July 18, 1908.
Miss Minnie Taylor, aunt of the murdered girl, collapsed today under a prolonged sweating by District Attorney O'Brien and Detectives Kay and Murnane, and gave the police valuable information relative to Hazel's companions on the drives she is known to have taken recently. Her breakdown was pitiful. She wept and prayed that Hazel's slayer would be taken. Several times, stimulants were necessary. 2 detectives accompanied her home. "Don't bring innocent persons into this terrible affair," she pleaded, leaving the district attorney's office. Mr. O'Brien intimated that at least 2 young men who were friendly with Hazel up to her death would be located on the Taylor woman's information at once. Arrests are likely to follow soon in the case.
Let's replay something Scott Frost, the crime novelist, had said to us in episode 1.
If you were writing this as a story, like, who would the killer be? Like, who would you make the killer out to be?
Either the wealthy guy who was using her and realized it was going to f*** up his life and killed her. Or there's the half-witted farmer's son who has an encounter and, you know, almost like Of Mice and Men, sort of that kind of a character.
Yeah.
We We don't know for sure who killed Hazel Drew. But as the investigation progressed in 1908, the list of persons of interest was growing quite long. Hazel worked for very wealthy men, who ran in influential circles with other very wealthy and politically connected men. Maybe one of them could have been the hypnotist that her mother had mentioned. The Hislop connection, too. The fact that Thomas Hislop was the former city treasurer, he resigned amid scandal. In 1906, his deputy was said to have stolen the money, but everybody thought that maybe he was involved too. And when the successive treasurer took over, they found that there might have been a lot more than $10,000 missing from the coffers. So, there's a lot of speculation that Hislop might have taken money. And if Hazel lived in his house, at the time, domestic servants were kind of treated like members of the family, right? They were, living with them. They were up in all of their business. They saw all their dirty laundry, figuratively and literally, of course. Perhaps Hazel might have caught wind of this transgression, stolen money, and been silenced for it. That's not a completely absurd idea, right?
No, not at all. Or if she was in some way the recipient of some of the money. Or
people did talk about her living outside of her means, right? And having all this money to afford fancy dresses and trips and things like that. Could she have benefited from that money?
It's certainly possible. It's all speculation, but it's also what is documented is that there was, even if he wasn't charged, there's likely a lot more money was being pilfered from the taxpayers of Troy. I don't know how many city treasurers today would have, live-in servants, essentially.
It's a part-time job these days, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it would be many. So, but obviously this person it wasn't just, I don't think that was his only source of income. It was sort of like a thing that you do as as being like a good upstanding person in your community, being like a steward of funds, and to have even the whiff of that on you is bad. And it's hard. It's very murky, and it leads you you can conjecture all sort of things. Certainly if you were how you'd write this as a novel or a movie.
It'd be a great plot twist for a Scott Frost crime novel, right?
It sure would.
Plot twist.
And then there was Frank Smith, the farm boy, the rube, rumored to be in love with Hazel. Maybe he was lying about what happened when he ran into Hazel on July 6th along the Taborton Road. But there's also her uncle, and the two young men Aunt Minnie gave up under duress. You can fashion plausible motives for any of them to kill Hazel at this point. A few days after Hazel's body was discovered, District Attorney Jarvis O'Brien ordered Teal's Pond drained. He was looking for any evidence that might help crack the case. Maybe they'd find some of her belongings at the bottom of the pond, or a murder weapon. In the days before submersible electric pumps and other more advanced technology, draining the pond was no small task. When Mark Marshall and Bob Moore took us down to see it, the idea of draining it seemed almost unfathomable. It was a huge effort, all for naught. They found nothing in the pond.
But something was discovered that day, by a reporter, in fact, not a detective. Hazel's glasses. They were lying on the ground about 10 feet from the shore. Police had missed them during their initial sweep of the area. That detail solidified Mark Marshall's theory about what happened the night Hazel died.
Like I said, I don't think she was brought down here dead. I think she was killed here, simply because of the glasses being found here. They would have flown off when she was attacked.
Right.
If they flew off, she was attacked somewhere else down the road or someplace else like that, the glasses would have been down there.
Right.
And it doesn't make any sense for a murderer to pick up glasses and pick up the body and then bring it down here and then throw the glasses off.
Right,
you don't
right.
normally do something like that.
Right. It's not impossible, but it's not likely.
It's not
right?
likely, yeah.
Next time on The Girl in the Pond, we'll dive further into the investigation into Hazel Drew's murder.
I'll not leave thee, thy lone one, to pine on the stem, since the lovely are sleeping. Go sleep thou with them.
The Girl in the Pond is a production of the Times-Union. It's produced by Jessica Marshall and Patrick Tyne. Written and edited by Jessica Marshall. Editorial direction and fact-checking by Erica Smith and Casey Seiler. Production help from Daniel Roberts, Sarah Diodato, Mike Goodwin, Tony Pallone, Tyler A. McNeil, and Kathleen Moore. Our theme song is The Last Rose of Summer, written by Thomas Moore. Musical arrangement by Matthew A. Streifert. Vocals by Josephine Diodato. Additional music supplied by Lionel Cohen and Francois Couture via Getty Images.